Um, my name is Katie Theodorus, and I'm an artist working in Melbourne, Australia. My art is mostly canvases, acrylics on canvas, and watercolors. I also do some soft sculpture in crochet, and it's generally very bright and colorful. There's a lot of patterns and embellishments with quirky characters in it. Yeah. Um, but the exhibition that I have up at Noir Gallery at the moment in the window is called Before, During, After. And it originally was going to be very, very different from what it is. It was supposed to be at the start of this year, but it was postponed a couple of times because of the pandemic. But that gave me actually a chance to think about what I really wanted to do. And I came to the realization that the theme I'd chosen before it just seemed very frivolous and naive and almost inappropriate considering what had been happening in 2020 with the pandemic. So, and I won't say what it is because I've left that behind now. So I came up with this new idea after I was looking at my art that I'd been creating during the pandemic, and I noticed that it was very markedly different to what I'd been creating before. It was a lot more toned down, a lot more minimalist. I did works in just ink and black and white with no color. And it was so different to what I'd been doing before that it really hit me how the pandemic has affected me and my art, especially. So I thought I'd do my exhibition around that exploration. So I wanted to tell the story of how my art has changed during this year, which is why it's called Before, During and After, which refers to before, during and after the pandemic. And I actually visually divided the space into 3 sections to tell that story, running from left to right. So I drew lines down, dividing it into 3 parts, and I painted the words before on the left, during in the middle, and after on the right. So in the before section, you see all of my art I've created in the last few years before the pandemic, which is bright, colorful, exciting, has fun characters, tells stories. Often they're set in alien dreamscapes. I was having these dreams that would give me inspiration for the scenes, and they were often like at nighttime on an alien planet with strange colors and strange characters. And sometimes they were emerging from portals. So some of them have this like round halo type thing, and they're emerging from the center of that into our world. And that was something that was on my mind a lot before the pandemic. And at the bottom of the space, I put some craft projects that I'd finished as well in the last couple of years. Some soft sculpture, little monster creatures, and a blanket, and a few other things. And they're all bright and colorful as well that I'd enjoyed making. And the reason I included those is because I noticed that I'd stopped making any craft during the pandemic as well. And I know a lot of people took up crafts and started learning crafts and making things. But for me, it was the opposite, because I'd been doing that before, and everything that I'd been doing before, it just kind of fell away. So that was another thing that I wanted to convey in the space. And then moving on to the center part, the during part, I really wanted to convey the sense of the color disappearing and it becoming a lot more minimalist, more black and white, but also more of an enclosed space. So, I mean, I was at home, for 9 months. I very rarely left the house, and the house felt like a safe space that I was, alone with just my partner, away from everyone else I knew. So it felt very safe and it felt very cozy, like a cocoon, especially over winter. And I became very that idea of a cocoon really was on my mind a lot. So as well as the artworks that I've put up, which I created during the pandemic, I created a little cozy nest thing at the bottom with cushions and blankets to represent that kind of cozy cocoon and feeling safe. And some of the artworks I created for that section, one is a guide on how to go to the supermarket, kind of like I'm interested in making fake documents, which are kind of tongue-in-cheek and ironic. So this one piece lists the steps to take to go to the supermarket, but it's really overblown and full of anxiety. So at one point it says, you know, if anyone comes closer than 1.5 meters, leave immediately, abandon the trolley and go home. And that kind of thing, which is how I was actually feeling at the time. Like anytime I left the house, I felt so anxious, and that kind of expresses how I was feeling. And another piece, I created another fake document, which when the Eurovision Song Contest was cancelled, I know it sounds trivial, but that hit me quite hard because I realized just everything that we used to take for granted is, well, a lot of things are no longer there this year. And I thought about the Wikipedia page where it lists all the winners of the Eurovision Song Contest and a lot of other events that happen every year. And then just next to 2020, it says cancelled, and how that'll be there forever. And every time you refer to that document, that'll be there as a reminder of what a shit year this was and how much we lost. And that was one time when I felt quite emotional. So I created this fake document which lists the winners for the last 20 years, and then under 2020 a huge cancelled in big red letters to kind of drive home that concept of it's just gone, it just never happened. So in that section of the window there's a lot of just a sense of what we've lost and what the things that we took for granted. Like there's another piece, a couple of pieces I did around intimacy and touch, and you know, people have to stay away from each other now, and they can't hug their friends and their family when they want to. So those were quite emotional pieces, and again, that's very different to what I was doing before, because my art before wasn't really that emotional. Like it was more about being happy and looking at bright colors and stuff like that. But this was more focused on emotions and not necessarily just one side of the spectrum of happy to sad. It was just moving more towards the sad end of the spectrum. And then the final third section of the space on the right is labeled after, and that represents the future. And not knowing what's going to happen in the future, will we get back what we had before? Will we lose certain things forever, and what will those things be? Will they be things that we didn't even think of? And then that space I tried to keep a lot more kind of sparse. So and there's more text. So I'd written words and phrases to express how I was feeling at each stage, but this one is more words than there is actual pieces, and all of the artworks are unfinished. Some of them are ones I started when the pandemic, started, but I still haven't finished because I just lost the heart for them. And some are just like trying to figure out what my style is now, what I'm trying to do now. So my practice has changed so much, but I don't really know what direction it's heading in anymore. And I guess it's just an exploration of trying to figure out what that is. And then all the craft pieces that I've included at the bottom of that space are unfinished works, which I don't know if I'll ever finish them or not. Like one, for example, was I was knitting a toy dinosaur, and it was to give to my friend's baby. And she turned 1 in March, and she had a big a birthday party planned, and that was the very first event that I was cancelled in my personal life and that we couldn't go to. And I'd been making this dinosaur for her birthday, and then I just didn't have the heart to finish it because I figured out pretty quick that I wouldn't get to see her again for a while. And I still haven't seen her, and she's going to be 2 in a couple of months, and that's just, I can't wrap my head around that. So I decided to include that piece as an expression of that, of all of the things I just said. And there are several other unfinished crafts as well there in the window. Yeah, in the future I may finish them or I may not. Well, I mean, the pandemic was not a good thing from any viewpoint, but it has given me an opportunity to reassess my practice and to go deeper. Because I think I tend to avoid emotions, expressing emotions a lot. I used to. And I know a lot of people, that's what their practice is about getting out that emotion that they need to express. They can't express any other way. But I was never really like that before. I stayed safe. I stayed in my comfort zone. I created art that made me happy, and I wanted to make other people happy, but I stayed away from anything that might be perceived as negative or that made me feel uncomfortable. And not just in emotion, but also in techniques and materials themselves, actually. So, I've always enjoyed creating works on canvas and just slopping the paint around and just mucking around, and I found that fun, but it was also safe. So one of my perceived weaknesses is not being able to draw, but I created some pieces that are just drawings, ink drawings, during the pandemic, and I showed them to people, and in the past I would never have done that. But I felt like it was time to be more vulnerable and to take those risks. So I guess in that way, the pandemic has helped me to realize that I can go deeper and I can, explore those emotions that I would never have before. That was a piece, Farewell My Lovely Phone is a piece that I created before the pandemic, so it's in the before section, and it's from a series of what I call danglies, because it's a string of items tied together that hang from the ceiling, and the whole series in general is a statement on consumerism and capitalism. So they're items that are just cheap throwaway plastic little toys that you might get in a burger meal, or and one of those chocolate eggs that you have the toy, but then you put it together and that's fun, but then what do you do with it, and then it's in your house forever. So I tied them together with pieces of ribbon to hang from the ceiling. But this one in particular is a string of phone covers. It's my old iPhone, which was actually my first smartphone, which was rather exciting for me. So I bought quite a lot of phone covers for it, and I would swap them out every day. Lots of cute ones, like a Totoro one and a Pokemon one. And I enjoyed having fun and interesting phone covers every day. But then that phone gradually died. The battery just went kaput. And so I had to upgrade to a new phone, but that none of the covers fit the new phone. So they were completely useless. And that made me pretty sad. And the phone itself, this thing that I had carried around with me and looked at and touched many times a day for years, I couldn't throw it away. I didn't have the heart, so I decided to turn it into an artwork. And then I just, the name Farewell My Lovely Phone popped into my head. And so then I spent an evening, got out some ribbon and I tied all the covers together with a piece of ribbon and with the phone at the very bottom, so that it kind of hangs almost like a garland, I guess. And I got a texter and I wrote, Farewell My Lovely Phone, with love hearts like emojis on it. And that's kind of like my memorial to my old phone. whose name was Meme, MEAM. Don't ask me why. I wanted to have a go at doing some of the things similar to what I'd been doing before the pandemic. So those kinds of alien landscape scenes with patterns and unusual colors on them. And I was actually going to try making the figure, rather than just like a jelly bean, other people call them, figure, a bit more human and a bit like with a more human face and hair, and maybe more relatable, I don't know, but I wanted to bring more humanity into it, I guess, if you can, alien humanity, I don't know. But I stalled. So I drew the outline of the figure, and then for some reason, I hesitated to fill it in with the details, and I'm not sure why. So it's unfinished, and I don't know if I'll finish it. Maybe. I think it's worth pursuing, though, to try and bring the old style and into the future and add something new to it and see what direction that goes in. All of those. Actually, that part I call the wall of shame. It's basically a brain dump of whenever I'm feeling doubtful, whenever I feel like my work sucks, I just need to get that out of my head because I'm procrastinating. I just grab a couple of highlighters and a piece of just normal photocopier paper, and I do this kind of star pattern with the highlighters, and then over the top in black texture I'll write whatever it is that's been circling around in my head, like, you know, my life sucks, or everything I do is shit, or, you know, and then I write that out on the paper and I feel like it's out of my head now. So I have a small collection of those. I did the first one, I think about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So yeah, I think it's a good exercise to just get started, to just do something, you know, to create something. And then I always find that afterwards I feel so much better, and then I can start working on my pieces that I've been working on, and yeah, it's like a Kickstarter for my brain and my creativity process.